Greg Keenan, the sound minion. How you doing, dude?
Good, man. How are you? Glad to
I
be here.
can't. Awesome. Thank you, man. I can't complain, but why don't you tell everybody about your project Hated and about Skinned, some brutal shit? What's that all about?
So, go with the old school first. Skinned is a old school brutal death metal band that's been around since 1995. I joined playing bass in 2016, I think, and have sometime, probably first half of 2024, we should have another album out, which is going to be different than what we've done before. Still definitely sort of old school brutal death metal, but there's going to be a whole bunch of guest vocalists, guest guitar players. So keep your eyes out for that. Hopefully within the next month or so, we should have our first single with a video out. So stoked for that. Big year for Skinned. And then the new project that I'm in is a band called Hated. It's kind of a new deathcore band started by a couple of guys in Casper, Wyoming about 5 years ago. That was sort of a just a songwriting project. They didn't really have any long-term plans other than like, hey, we like writing music together. Let's write some music. And fast forward to a little over a year ago, they decided they were going to start playing live shows, and I started with them earlier this summer. Played 3 shows so far, and they've all been fucking sick. Like it's a very different sort of vibe than sort of old school brutal death metal. It's way less technical, way more just like heavy, jammy, and it's a hell of a lot of fun. And they're super cool dudes.
Nice, man. I checked out Hated when it, like you said, the band's relatively new and it sounds pretty heavy, dude. Like it's deathcore, but like it still has like really strong, brutal elements to it. And of course,
Yeah.
Skinned is, been around forever and awesome band. So you're the bass player. What got you into playing bass, dude? Like, what was the thing that made you want to pick the bass up?
It was largely my friend Gabe in 8th grade started playing bass and hanging out with him after school one day, and he was just starting to take lessons and was like, man, this is really cool. My mom was a music teacher, very supportive of music, not at all interested in rock or heavy stuff, but was supportive of me playing an instrument. And I did shortly before that come to her and was like, hey, I want to play drums. She said, no, I don't want to listen to drums, which I have to say, in retrospect, drums are awesome. But thank you, Mom, because I am glad I don't have to set up and tear down drums ever. A bass is way easier. But so I started playing bass in like 8th grade, took lessons. I was in a Ramones cover band for about 2 weeks. And after that, I started playing guitar because I had been playing bass for a while. I got to a point with my lessons where my teacher was basically like, if you really, unless you want to dive into some heavy theory, there's not really much more I can teach you. It's sort of up to like, you have the tools, now you have to decide what you're going to do with them. And a friend of mine at the time was taking guitar lessons. Basically, we had lessons back to back every Monday at 5 and 5:30. And so I started learning guitar stuff and then played guitar for 20 years in goth industrial band and a couple of like sort of Gothenburg influenced metal bands. And then Travis in Skinned one day was like, hey, I know you play guitar, but would you be interested in playing bass and doing some touring? It's like, absolutely, I would. And I've pretty much only played bass since then. So I always played bass a little bit here and there, but focused on guitar for a while. And now I'm back to bass, and I don't even really think about guitar much.
That's awesome, man. Like, it's like the transition. You played bass and you played guitar, went back to bass instead of like, the old thing of I play guitar, now I play bass. So that's cool that, you're a bass player. And that being said, dude, like, what were your influences? I mean, you guys, you play brutal death metal, the deathcore thing, but like, what music really brought you in?
Early on, like when I first started, I was like super into Metallica, and Nine Inch Nails was kind of just starting to be a thing. So I had friends that were really into rock and thrash, and the same friend Gabe one day comes to school and he hands me a cassette of Altars of Madness and is like, dude, you have to listen to this. I've never heard this before. And so that was kind of a little bit of a foray into death metal, but I never really got like heavy into it the way some of my friends did until way later. Like I was super late to the party compared to a lot of my friends because it was so different than what I was used to. I didn't really have the tools to even appreciate it. It just sounded like chaos to me a lot of the time. With a handful of exceptions, like bands like Incantation and Obituary that were a little bit less crazy and a little more almost like, I don't know, doomy. There's definitely more melody there than this like crazy brutality that I listen to those bands some, but it's funny listening to stuff now and being like so impressed by it and being like 25 years late. 'Cause I had so many friends who were like, man, this stuff is so amazing. And there are still bands that like I'm just now starting to really kind of understand like what was so awesome about it now, even though it came out in like 1997.
Those are good years too. Like I say, dude, like from like 96, maybe 94 to like 2006, like that was like the window of like extreme metal, in my opinion. I mean, there's always like the early or the late '80s stuff, early '90s, but that seemed to be like, in my opinion, one of the high water marks. And there were so many classic albums. And like you said, I'm still discovering a lot of those bands too. And I wasn't into death metal right away because I didn't understand it. And I actually liked black metal more because it had some melody to it. I didn't have the
Absolutely.
the appreciation for it. So, I mean, when you're not jamming to death metal, what else do you listen to?
Man, definitely listen to some black metal. I haven't totally gotten into a lot of the like I guess current sort of whatever iteration that it's in now, but I don't know, early like 2000-ish. Similarly with Morbid Angel, had a friend who was like really getting into specifically like Norway and Swedish black metal, and he gave me like an early Dimmu album and some Old Man's Child, and he's like, man, you got to check this stuff out. This is wild. It's really cool. So I went down that rabbit hole for many years. And then now, I mean, I listen to all kinds of stuff. I mean, like again, I feel sort of late to the party. I just discovered Entheos, sort of a deathcore new metal influence. Amazing vocalist. I mean, all of them are amazing, but I just happened to see a little of like she did a live take from one of their most recent songs where she does everything from like crazy fry screaming to super gutturals to like operatic style vocals within like two verses. So that kind of stuff is definitely cool. I still listen to a lot of like 90s and early 2000s pop punk. I'm super stoked that I got tickets for NoFX's like goodbye tour next summer. A little bit of Billie Eilish, Florence and the Machine. Oh man, I don't even know. Like there's tons of stuff. And I guess
So,
the new oldies, I mean, the oldies station is hilarious to me now in a very sort of nostalgic way because it's all like Red Hot Chili Peppers and the Bee Gees and Nirvana and 80s like new wave. So
so a little bit of everything all over the place. That's cool, man. Listening to just one thing gets old. And I think, I see you have some studio monitors behind you and you do, you're a sound engineer and a producer as well. So I'm sure that at a certain point, listening to things that may not be what you're currently working on is kind of refreshing.
yeah, I mean, I think most of us who listen to metal or not metal, listen to music more sort of actively, being either writers or performers, it's easy to get burned out on one genre because there's sort of you listen to certain things because it's nostalgic and it kind of get a little bit of a dopamine hit off of it. But then there's also when you start listening to like, how does that bass line make this song sort of gel together? How do these guitar melodies that sort of play off of each other support the vocal in a certain way that's interesting without taking attention away from it. And so it's always looking for a way to continue to be excited about music. And an easy way to do that sometimes is kind of get out of your genre norms and see what is getting other people excited.
Absolutely, dude. And everybody that I ask that question to that's a musician or a performer, they always kind of listen to music like academically, like looking at it like you're talking about the interplay between instruments or how things are supporting one another, or like what the dynamics are. So it's kind of like once you perform or you record music, you never listen to it the same. And I find it for myself hard to just appreciate things for what they are. And like, I mean, I get like if it's going for a certain thing and they're accomplishing that, that's cool. But it's interesting how we all that play music feel that way.
Absolutely. And it's a double-edged sword. I've definitely gone to shows where I was so distracted by somebody's guitar being out of tune for the entire set that like it was hard to focus on the things that were cool about it. And it's clear that the majority of the other people in the room like weren't even aware of it. And I was constantly like, how is the guitar tech not fixed that yet? Is it on purpose? It's not like this on the album. So that I wish I could turn that part of my brain off sometimes. Haven't figured out how to do it. If you figured out, please let me know.
Man, I don't know. I just try to like focus on the drums or something is what I do. Is like when you go see shows, it's like you're a bass player, I'm a guitar player, so that's what drawed me there to begin with. But after that, it's just kind of like, oh, the vocals are killer, this and that. But I hear you. It's like once it's like being cursed with your conscience. Once you know better, it's hard to move away from it.
Yes, it is.
So, what are you working on production wise? I mean, you stay pretty busy with the Sound Minion Studio thing. What are you working on?
Right now I am working on practicing all of this stuff that I'm involved in. I'm not really working on any studio projects specifically, other than I guess Thursday, final round of Grammy voting starts. So for the next 2.5 weeks, most of my free time is probably going to be listening to Grammy submissions, which is no small task. There's no way I'm going to listen to all of the stuff that I want to.
That's crazy. So what does that look like? I've never heard anything about anything like that before. I know there's a committee and they vote, but like what is that? What does that process entail?
So there are 2 rounds. The first round is sort of early fall, and basically I think up until it changes a little bit every year, but like middle to the end of the summer, the submission window ends. So anybody that wants to submit a project that's come out that fits their categories can submit. And so the first round is sometimes like, I mean, like record of the year, which is like single or song. There can be in the pop category like 1,400 submissions. So I don't imagine that anybody listens to every single one. And a lot of it is stuff that like, I mean, might be a great song, but the production isn't great, or like there's sort of anybody can submit to be considered, which is awesome. The reality is that one of the reasons why bigger names often make it through is that if there's no promotion, you're completely unknown unless somebody submits something that is truly like incredible and you're completely unknown. There's just not going to be enough buzz to get enough people to actually listen to it for it to make it past the second round. So it's not that people intentionally aren't paying attention to it. It's just, I mean, look, when any of us find new music, you don't often just like find a new band completely organically that nobody that you know of has heard of. The buzz just finally got to you and you're like, I'm going to go check that out. That sounds cool. So there are dozens of categories. You are, in the last few years, they've switched it to where they really encourage you to only vote in categories that you actively work in. So you can certainly go listen to stuff, but you can't really vote in everything. You can usually vote in sort of the top 4, which is like album, song, artist, and record of the year. and then you can pick 3 other ones. And so if you work on liner notes in production, you can go doing that stuff. If you work in classical, you can go vote in classical. I pretty much tend to stick to like rock and metal, alternative, and indie because while I listen to a lot of stuff, I don't do any work in it. So as far as like production and engineering or even songwriting to a large degree, like I have an appreciation for it, but I don't have the sort of skills that are in what people are currently working on. So you sort of get all of that funneled down from the first round, and then the second round is the ones that are actually the ballot for who's going to win an award. And the voting process is basically the same, but the categories are considerably smaller. So best pop, song might be like 40 songs instead of 1,400 songs. And actually, no, I take that back. That is usually like 5 or 10. Most of the other ones are a handful. So it's much easier to go through and listen to a lot of the finalists, but it's still a lot of music. And you really want to go and like sit and like listen to it. You don't want to just have it on in the background while you're, you know, refretting a guitar or cleaning a fretboard, because then you're not really paying attention to like what makes it potentially really great.
Man, that's crazy. Like I never knew it was such an intensive process. There's so many, so many different artists and what the genres were. Because like if you don't play country, I mean, as a producer, an engineer, or as a musician, you can appreciate it or for its production quality or how well the song was written, even if it's not your cup of tea. But I think it's probably cool that they have people that are sticking to the genres that they actively listen to. And so now I got to ask you, what is your personal criteria in the field that you vote in? What makes those songs vote worthy?
I mean, obviously, so when you have something like record of the year, it's sort of all of the components, the performance, the songwriting, the engineering. But if it's something like producer of the year, I'm going to not necessarily be as concerned about like the arrangement if it's more about the engineering. I mean, obviously the arrangement probably is pretty solid if it's made it to the final round. But for the most part, I think on one hand, I'm going to listen to it with sort of my engineering and producer ears because I want to hear like, is the stereo field clear and like does everything sit in the mix in a way that like really makes sense and gets the attention it deserves? And is the songwriting good, or do the lyrics feel a little bit lazy? But on the other hand, I'm going to try to listen to it as a fan of music and just be like, what does this song make me feel? Does it a, a a sincere and intense kind of emotional response that makes me want to listen to it again? Because you can have a incredibly produced song that's kind of an okay song and like technically it's flawless, but it doesn't really elicit any sort of emotional response. And so often the stuff that makes it into that last tier usually do all of those things more often than not, which is no small feat.
Absolutely not. So it's almost like listening to your own shit. The same parameters and stuff for your own music apply to the Grammy
Absolutely.
voting as well. Man, that's really really cool. That's probably quite an experience. I mean, that probably takes, like you said, dedicated listening, critical listening, all the things that as a musician and an engineer, come into play in your own stuff. That's awesome. So back to Skinned. Are you recording that record, or did you engineer that record?
No, oh my God, I just totally blanked his name. I did all of my bass stuff as far as tracking goes. I think almost all of this has been done sort of like remotely because there are some people that are going to be on this that are in different countries. And so it doesn't make sense to try to all go to one studio. But so Darren, the drummer, who has been in lots of albums, he's a studio drummer and a producer. He's recording all of the drums, he's mixing everything. Travis has done all of his own guitars. He has produced some of the vocals either remotely or have had people come out and done like a day session at a studio nearby to go do vocals for their parts if they didn't have a good place to go do it. It's and this project I recorded all of my own bass, but I didn't really have anything to do with like the mix or anything. Other than the rest that I've heard, it sounds like basically what I sent them. So I had a little bit of creative input, but never know at the end of the day if it's going to be totally appropriate for what the end result is.
For sure,
I'm
dude.
just excited to hear it as everybody else. I've only heard like little bits and pieces.
Oh man, yeah. When will we expect that release?
I don't think that there's a concrete release yet. The first single hopefully is going to be within the next month. So I would think that probably going to do like 3 singles. I don't know if we're going to try to do all of those before the album comes out, but at least probably a couple.
That's killer. That's awesome, man. So are you guys gonna do any videos with it or just the music?
We have, I think the hope is to have 3 videos. We recorded them all. As far as I know, all of the video, including like guest appearances for him, is done. It's a little bit up to like when the video editor is going to be able to get them all done because he's a super busy guy. He does lots of stuff for lots of bands. So we're stoked to be able to work with him, but some of it is finding time in his schedule, not just ours.
For sure. And you can't rush greatness. I mean, like anything else in life, if you want it to be quality, it takes time. And you
Yep.
know what, I don't know, like anything you do is worth taking the time and the effort to make it right the first time. And it's totally understandable. So is Hated, you have any plans to tour this next year coming up?
We haven't talked about touring anything in specific. There are a couple of festivals, one in particular, like in the South, that has asked us if we want to play like late spring. But it's totally a matter of, do we think that we could put something together to not totally like eat our lunch all the way there and back for one show?
For sure.
But I think some of it, the current sort of idea with this band is start playing some live shows, see how they land. So far, they've been awesome. Like, I think way better than we have sort of anticipated them to be. And see if we can kind of just grow our sphere a little bit, sort of regionally. And then certainly if somebody's like, hey, we're going to do a run out there too, you guys should tag along. If something like that comes up for any band, that makes it way more viable if it's not just you in a van and a trailer. But I think we are all open to doing that kind of stuff if it looks like there's some really viable possibilities. So fingers crossed that those come up, because I think all of us would be super down to do some of that.
Yeah, dude, and touring's not easy. I mean, the financial costs, the logistical, figuring all that kind of stuff out. So if you're able to hit the road with somebody, it makes it a lot easier. And I mean, you've toured a lot, dude. What was the show? What was your favorite place to play? All the shows that you played, what was your favorite place?
I don't know if I have like a single favorite. I think we played Stonehenge Festival several years ago. And that's like, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, that's a small outdoor festival, just like an hour north of Amsterdam. That was a really cool festival because it was, I think it's like roughly 2,000 people that attend it, and it's in a little tiny town in the middle of the countryside. But it's just like, it's a really fun vibe. It's a good size. There are 2 stages that go back and forth. I think it's one day. That was definitely a lot of fun. We did a Balkan tour just by ourselves with some local bands, and playing some of the little clubs in like Serbia and Romania was awesome. Because sometimes, you're playing a little tavern that occasionally has live music for 60 people that like lose their shit because bands internationally like never come there. And so like, I don't know, anytime you play a show where people are just like super excited is a good time, even if it's 30 people or 3,000 people.
Absolutely, dude. Like, I was at Stonehenge this last summer with Possessed.
That's right. So yeah, you totally know.
Yeah, and it was a cool smaller festival, but an awesome vibe. Hypocrisy played after Possessed did, so it was cool to watch that. And I think just the whole festival culture is really cool. I mean, it's kind of a pain in the ass that you got to go get like special money to buy food or anything, but whatever. I'm just complaining. But like down in the Balkans too, and I was just this last summer and like playing like in Croatia and playing in Romania and stuff like that. It's so cool. Like you're saying, 3 people, 30 people, 300, 3,000. When people appreciate what you're doing, it really does make it worthwhile. And that's what this is all about. As far as I'm concerned as a musician, it's not about money or anything else. It's about the art and the enjoyment of doing so.
Absolutely. And I haven't ever played any of like the enormous festivals. I'm sure those would be like probably high points to get to play those someday.
Absolutely, man. And like, I was lucky enough this last summer with Possessed to be on the tour playing, but also to be their guitar tech. And I got to see some of that stuff firsthand, and it was really, 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 really cool. It's so big. It's like going anywhere. It's like going to New York, dude. Like, it's so much. You just put your phone away because it's like you can't take enough pictures. It's just kind of like overwhelming, to be honest with you. You know what I mean? And that's how it was.
Half the time, it's hard to even like take a picture of what you're looking at. You're like, oh man, this is crazy. And you look at it like, that's a dumb picture that doesn't even begin to convey what I'm trying to say. So you just put your phone away and tell stories about it later.
Exactly, dude. And now you're out of Denver, right? Denver, Colorado.
Just north of Denver. Well, so Skiing is sort of like Fort Collins, and then Hated, we're basically between like Castle Rock and Fort Collins, kind of up and down the Front Range. But people outside of Colorado know where Denver is.
Yes, I've been there a couple of times, and I know where Fort Collins is. I remember when we came in from the north, we took a ride or something like that to head that way to Denver, and like it was crazy. We went through this like suburban area to get there, but it was. I mean, to get back on the freeway was cool. But Colorado's a beautiful state, man. Like lots of different topography. Like part of it's desert, part of it's it's like it used to be a sea, kind of like at the bottom of a sea or whatever. Yeah, it's really cool. And now you travel a lot. And it seems I've talked. Obviously, I know you outside the music thing, but a little bit. And you traveled a lot too. And didn't you go to Crete this last summer?
Yeah, we went to Greece for a couple of weeks. My partner and a friend of ours. The first time that we have been to Greece where it was not a study abroad trip. My partner's a college professor, so we actually got to go and like do our own thing. And I think you were there like 2 weeks after we were. And it was brutally hot. And when we were there, it was amazing. It was like high 70s.
Dude, you have like it was freaking way hot. It was so hot after I think the first show that we played in Romania, even when we first got there, I passed out because I played 2 sets and I freaking passed out for like 20 minutes. And I woke up going like, I've never experienced that before. There's like wildfires going on. So it's kind of like the western half of the country. Yeah, it was insane, dude.
That country had a really brutal year.
Yeah, you got lucky. You were there when it was like 70 degrees and everything was fine, but yeah, it was hotter than the fire pits of hell for sure, dude. Like it was crazy. And you've been all over, dude. You've been all over the world. So that's really cool. And playing music, traveling, that's awesome because it's nice to be, to be seeing things. And I think that's one thing about playing music is you get to see what's beyond your front door or over the next hill. And I think as musicians, we have a little bit of that, that wandering kind of thing to us.
Absolutely. And that is one really cool thing about touring abroad is you certainly travel in a kind of a unique way. I mean, sometimes you don't really get to see things the way that you want to, but the people that you interact with and the way that you interact with people is a way that you wouldn't happen if you were just a tourist. And sometimes you do get, I don't know, like the distilled version. If you only have an afternoon in a city, there are times where you get to see things that you wouldn't have seen if you were traveling as a tourist because somebody already has this it's like an assumed friendship with strangers when you show up. People are like, oh, hey, you guys are here. Great. Set up. If you have time, we should run down the street. There's this really cool thing. And I've seen so many random little shops and galleries and businesses that would be completely passed if you're just walking around looking at things out of a travel guide or Atlas Obscura or something.
Absolutely, dude. And like, I'm not really a big drinker, but when I go places, I like to get like some food. And I've had some
Absolutely.
killer food just out of like hole in the wall places. You're kind of wondering when you walk in, if I'm going to get sick after I eat this kind of stuff. But once in a while, you find something good. But I mean, that's what I do is just kind of like wander around like that too.
Yeah, the first night that we were in Romania when we did that tour, we ended up staying at the promoter's house, which was so, I don't know, it was sort of stereotypical and sort of unique. It was in a little subdivision of relatively new houses, but like half of them weren't finished, which you just see that all over Eastern Europe. So there's this huge house, like we each had our own bathroom that had like a jetted tub in it, and he lived there by himself. And then he was really excited to be like, "Hey, after the show, let's go back to my place, show you guys your bedrooms, and then I'll grill for you." And then we went on his yard, and he like, "Did you have meat when you were in Romania? It's like a national, it's sort of like a minced meat, sort of like almost like sausage that you
I
sort of
think
form into like little like patties or links. You
I
just eat
think
it in
they
a lot
had
of places." And he's like, "Let's grill this up and throw some food on. We'll have some beers and hang out."
I think that we had. I think they had it after the show. We had some pizzas, but my experience in Romania with food was bad, dude. Like we went to this place next to our hotel, and it was like stroganoff kind of stuff. It sounds familiar. You know what I mean? Because I mean, haven't ate a lot of international cuisine before, but I can recognize that name. And so I ate it the day before the show, dude. The night before the first show, and I got super sick, food poisoning, dude. I didn't sleep all night. I was like ralphing up black stuff because it was just, and I was just like,
It's
oh, dude,
brutal.
it was nasty. And then I got sick eating out of McDonald's too in Bulgaria because the lettuce was like they like McDonald's like steams their lettuce, and you're thinking, okay, after I had food poisoning, I'm gonna go with the sure thing. Yeah, McDonald's is gnarly, but it's better than getting the Romanian botulism or whatever the hell that was. And so I went to McDonald's and I got a Big Mac, and they didn't cook the lettuce. Like the lettuce wasn't steamed, and dude, I got sicker than shit again. It was, oh man, it was
That
terrible.
sucks.
And in that heat, dude, like sweating, like the second show that we played was like at Thessaloniki, and I was dying. I was just like, I mean, just power through. Of course, you do what you do. Everybody's been sick out there on the road, but yeah, it was fucked up.
Food poisoning is a special kind of hell, though, for while you're traveling. I don't wish that on anybody. And yeah,
No,
you would think something like McDonald's would be safer. I mean, I guess you can't ever really assume it's completely safe. You can get food poisoning here too. It's less likely that it happens.
yeah, dude. I mean, you roll
Well,
the
hopefully
dice.
that's your one story.
I hope so too, dude. Because I mean, if I go through that again, I mean, I just won't. I'll just know that I'm not gonna like be dehydrated and keel over dead. Hopefully, it's not so hot either. Because I think that really is what it was the heat. Like just screwed me up. Because like once we got to like Italy, it wasn't so. I mean, it was still hard shit, but it wasn't that bad. And it was like we had like our first day off.
Yeah.
And that was kind of cool. But talk about your tour experience, because a lot of people think that touring is like a party on wheels and it's an easy time and it's a good time, and we have like catering all the time and shit like that. Like, so what is your experience with touring?
My experience with touring in general has been mostly pretty good. I mean, there's always, random things like the bus breaks down and you gotta sleep in a cold RV in this middle of the night on the side of the highway until the part can get there. That's just vehicles break down. But for the most part, I've been really lucky that like I've never been on a tour with a band that like you just don't get along with. I've certainly heard stories of that where like 3 days in and you're like, wow, we couldn't be on more opposite sides of the world on anything. And so we just gotta like do our job every night until the tour's over and go home. I've never had that experience. I think the first like full on tour that I did with Skinned was with Defeated Sanity. And then there were two other bands that were here from the States that like that was one of the best tours ever. Like we all got along well. Every day was a good time. We didn't have any like crazy drives. The bus did break down. but it happens. Everybody had good spirits about it. Like that's the other thing is sometimes you travel with people and it's great until something happens and then like one person can't handle like unexpected stuff and their whole demeanor changes and like that can be brutal. I don't think most people that tour much either get over it or you stop doing it. Because traveling in general, stuff just comes up. Or like you get sick and you still gotta travel and you still gotta get on the bus and like it sucks, but you gotta make it work. And so for the most part, all of my travel experience touring has been really positive. There's definitely been some trips that were like really hard, but at the end of the day, I don't really remember like the stuff that was frustrating and hard. I remember mostly all of the really cool things that would not have happened if I hadn't gone. And that seems to be true for most people I've ever talked to. Like it's easy to remember like, oh, I was really shitty when that happened, but that's not like the first thing that you remember. You remember about the cool people you met and like the good food that you had, as well as maybe the food that made you sick, the good times that you had with people. I mean, I don't know. It's just, it's the memories of it that I have, I should say, are overwhelmingly positive, which I'm so grateful for. And hopefully get to do it more. I don't have any plans in the near future, but definitely would love to do more of it because I don't know, it's a life experience thing that I haven't done anything else that's like it, and I want to do more of it.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Like it's and we're fortunate to be able to have those experiences because not everybody, not everybody gets to share in that. And like you said, dude, your mindset's a big part of it. And every time that I'm doing it, I just think I'm happy to be here. I want to be here.
Absolutely.
And just those two things is like that's enough to keep you going. You get, you want to be here, you're happy to be here. Because I've heard people complain too, and it's just like, how think about like how fortunate we are to be actually doing this.
Absolutely. And I've been to so many places in the world that I honestly never thought I would go because of music. And that just like never ceases to make me happy.
Absolutely, shit could be worse, dude. I mean, and getting to see what's beyond the next hill. And I like the idea of, every day is an adventure. It's like, people walking in and out of your lives. And like you said, you go to a place and all of a sudden you're friends with these people because, just the whole vibe. It's a positive thing. That's what
Absolutely.
music is, a positive thing, man. It's not, and in my opinion, if people want to have a shitty attitude or a bad time, they're gonna do that no matter what. But it doesn't affect no matter how negative they get, it's not going to affect my appreciation to just be here and doing it.
Absolutely.
So you don't have any plans coming up to tour, you said, but you got some records coming out. You got the Skin thing is going to happen sometime this year. You're going to have some videos, some singles. What are some of your goals for 2024?
Play more music. I know like we don't have any more shows currently booked. And I think the hope probably over the next couple of months is to start working on a new EP. Because the previous two EPs that they've released have basically been Jordan, the vocalist, and Colton, the guitar player. And so we're excited to start working on music more collectively and like see what that looks like to a certain degree. What those two guys have created is pretty fucking awesome. And if that's what it takes for it to be continually awesome, perfect. I don't think the drummer and I like have any ego about like we have to be part of the writing process. We're just happy to be part of the project. And so if we have something cool to contribute, great. But if not, like we're happy to help bring all of that to fruition from whatever vision they have together. Jordan in particular has so many ideas for like the next 5 EPs. So some of it is like trying to help him like focus on one thing because he gets so excited about all of the cool ideas and we can't do it all at once. Nobody can do it all at once. But that's awesome to have somebody that's that excited about it. And then it'll be interesting to see what happens with Skin stuff when that stuff comes out. It would be really cool to play some more shows with that. And then there's a couple of other projects that I've talked to you about hopefully doing some touring maybe later this year, but that's so far off. and it's totally like we've had conversations about it. There's no commitments or any plans or anything, but they'd be cool opportunities if it happens. We'll see how that goes. And then on top of that, I'm always looking for more opportunities to go play music and hopefully do some touring. And I'm just happy to play music with cool people and see the world.
That's the dream in itself right there, dude. Absolutely. So if anybody wanted to contact you to do recording work or mixing or mastering, do you do that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I don't do it as much as I used to, so I'm definitely open to it. I have a website, soundminion.com. There should be contact info on there, or you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, DM me there anywhere. Shouldn't be too hard to find.
Right. Well, Greg, is there anything you'd like to say before we wrap it up, dude?
Listen to Hated, listen to Skinned. Go do good in the world.
Hell yeah, dude. Sounds like good stuff to me. Greg, thank you for taking the time to talk to me, dude. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. Thank you.
All right, dude. I'll see you soon.
Sounds good.